Akampayada. Makakiya Qabbannee, Qabbannee wako, wakayo, namabiya na basan. Bayan jala din nama, maka Qabbannee. It wasn't mogasa, it was an informal process. It wasn't a formal ritual. I was actually going to every community activity at that time. And on that day, I was harvesting taffy with the people. The men cut and the women tie. So we were all tired, and it was Debo. So they bring the food from the house for us to eat in the middle of the day, and we sat under the shade of a big tree. And I have my research assistant, whose name is Gudeta Nagri, who I have lost. I'm trying to find him. If BBC can help me find him, I would be very happy. He's from Dembidolo. He went with me. And so they started asking me, what is your name? I said, my name is Bonnie. They said, what does that mean? So they turned to him and they said, what is her character? He said, she's calm. She's a peaceful person. She's relaxed. She doesn't get easily agitated. He said, here we are on this day, sitting under the shade of a tree. You say she is a relaxed and calm person. Let us call her Qabbannee. So I asked, what is this name? They explained it. I said, I like that name. And then one of the people asked, but where is your father? Who is your father? I said, well, in this country, I'm traveling alone. Wakana ega. So they said, let's call you Qabbannee wakayo. So I liked that, and from that day they called me Qabbannee, and I have treasured that name.
How does it feel when someone calls you Ate Qabbannee?
I'm very happy. It's a welcoming, and it's an act of friendship. It's a recognition. I became interested in the Oromo through my father's friends who were missionaries. They talked to me about the call they received from Haile Selassie to Christianize the Gallas. They responded. They established mission stations in Horoguduru. And when I finished college, I wanted to find out more about these people. So I studied anthropology. I came here as 23-year-old, Karere, 1971. And I was welcomed by the people. By then I knew they were Oromos, not Gallas. And I was introduced to Oromos by the countryside people, the farmers, who had also cattle and herds. And I began to see that this was a great people that was invisible. So my career has been to try to make the Oromos visible through different means. I encountered many blockages, but in forming and being one of the founders of Oromo Studies Association, I tried to make to work with those scholars who were engaged scholars, who combine theory and scholarship with social action. I call myself one of those. And I think that this result that we have now in OSA is something to celebrate. But I left in 1973, and I have not returned until this month. I was not able to return to connect with the people in the countryside, in the rural area in Oromia, who I wanted to visit. The Derg would not allow. It was not welcomed by the following regime. Now I think that the Kero of Kare have opened the door for me and others to come, and that there is an important opening now.
What's your passion? What's driving you to do all these things for you?
Well, in my own opinion, I think if I had encountered any other people who were in similar situation, I would have responded as an issue of justice. As being a pastor's daughter, that's where I was starting, and I've tried to stay true to that commitment. Yes, I was involved with a group in the United States to form the Oromo Advocacy Alliance, and we were actually responding to the Kero Kare movement. We wanted to support them and advocate for them in every way we could. We took an active role. In fact, we initiated resolution in the U.S. Congress to call for inclusive governance and respect for human rights in Ethiopia. We were joined by Ethiopian Advocacy Network, by Amhara Association of America, by Ethiopian Human Rights Project, by international groups, Human Rights Watch, Amnesty International, the Torture and the Torture Survivors group called TASC, Torture, Abolition, and Survivor Support Coalition, and occasionally some other groups, such as Somali groups, to raise the common cause of human rights and inclusive governance. And I think that the reforms that are supported by the United States are impacted by that. We're trying to find different ways to advocate that will be effective.
That means you almost committed your life for the Oromo cause. And how's the reaction from your family and the people you live with?
My family has been very supportive. They realized that I had a unique opportunity. I somehow slipped through the cracks. I was able to get into the Oromo areas and have a kind of experience that others had not had. I think Oromos don't have enough allies because there have been many obstacles for people to have the kind of direct experience that I had. So I felt that that was my opportunity, and that's why I stayed loyal to that particular concern and commitment to impact this situation. A single person cannot have a huge impact, but if they stay true to what they started, I think they can have some.
We know you've done a lot of studies on the Oromo. Can you take us through your studies briefly?
When I was here in the country, I studied marriage patterns. I went to every wedding and sat in on the negotiation and understood a lot about Oromo society from that angle. When I was in Juma a couple weeks ago, I met a person from that area, and he said, "Oh, we remember you. I was one of the kids who followed you and yelled, tried to help you learn the language. You wore long skirts, you took pictures at every wedding." So that was my experience. I gave the paper to the Journal of Ethiopian Studies. I had spoken about the Oromo, but their protocol was to refer to Gallas, so the article talks about the Gallas. But finally, in the title, the Oromo marriage in Horoguduru, I think, it was retained. It was the first time the word Oromo was used in a title in the Ethiopian Studies Journal. But when I came to the US, I went into anthropology graduate school, and I began to analyze my experience and my observations. And I came to the conclusion that Ethiopia was the first neo-colonial case in Africa. Indirect rule, Europeans impacting the area through indirect rule. And I challenged the idea that Ethiopia is exceptional in Africa for resisting European control, because they were being influenced at every point in the creation of the state, in the conquest of the people, and in the continuing advising and funding, resource provision until now. We couldn't get a publisher. Most of the publications were reviewed by Ethiopianist scholars, so the funding was not forthcoming, so we did it ourselves. And my husband has always supported me in this. So we wrote The Invention of Ethiopia to put our ideas together. It took a long time. It came out in it went to the publisher in '89, it came out in 1990. I began to work on issues of all kinds related to Oromos, gender issues, refugee issues, human rights issues. I've continued to write about issues of land. My most recent publication in the Journal of Oromo Studies is a line-by-line translation of Hawi Tazara's protest song, Ka'ikero, in which I look at the deep explanations of Oromo's connection to their land as an umbilical cord, Handura. And I think she's done a brilliant job of explaining why the Oromos are connected, how deeply they are connected, and how now, after many years of absorbing much exploitation and injustice, they are rising up because they cannot be cut from their umbilical, from the Handura. Those are examples of my writing. But for the most part, I have spent my career giving the Oromo voice, working with people who are progressive, who may have great ideas, who are struggling with English or getting papers ready for the journal, and then advocating, giving talks, presenting papers, trying to influence scholars to open their eyes and look past many of the really powerful obstacles there are. Oromo are still, relative to their population, invisible.
So, tell me one thing about the Oromo that always amazes you and you always keep telling people.
If I have to pick one, it's that the Oromo see themselves as part of the land, as part of creation. They don't put themselves above creation or below, but there to share and sustain the resources that are God-given. I don't think it's an accident that the Oromos live on a well-watered, forested, productive area. It's not an accident. They made it that way by the way they apply the principles of the sacred knowledge of the Oromos. They see coiled within everything an embryo, a seed, if given the proper conditions, can grow and flourish. That's true with human beings, it's true with animals, it's true with plants, it's true with the conditions of the earth. So that's their responsibility, and I see that as a valuable asset. I have always appreciated it. I came to understand it in ways where my ideas clashed with Oromo ideas, and they carefully taught me the right place of human beings. That tradition could take its place with the great religions of the world if it's properly understood and explained. The West is looking for ways to reach sustainability, and the Oromos have already found it. So I think that's the most important thing about the Oromos that I appreciate. And I think that most Oromos who have been at least raised or exposed to the land in the country share that idea. So it's not gone yet, but the carriers of that tradition are being plucked up from the land and pushed into the urban areas as impoverished people selling chewing gum and driving taxi. And the enormous heritage that they carry is being lost. It grieves me. It's one of the issues that makes me continue to fight for the Oromos.
What do you want to see for the Oromo? What do you want the Oromo achieve, for example, like be it the government, the scholars, or going forward?
I shared my thoughts on Friday. I'll repeat them here. I think that I would like for the Oromo producers who still carry these ideas, who are still carrying the bulk of of Ethiopian economy through their production, through their livestock raising, through their farming. I would like for them to be acknowledged as partners and decision makers on their own product. This could happen in a number of ways, depending on how the government responds.
People are saying Oromos should go back to Gada and the values of Oromo. What do you think of that?
I think the values of Oromuma are there in the mind and heart of Oromos. So they don't need to come through intellectuals. They don't need to come through people who have been separated from their roots. But those intellectuals and educated can create opportunities and venues for ordinary Oromos to apply the principles that they have in individual cases, so that farmers can decide, given an opportunity, having it explained, can decide the best way to apply those principles. So it can come from the ground up, from the grassroots, at least in my view. And I would see that a grassroots approach that is supported by people who have more opportunity could appeal even to the international community, could appeal to neighbors, and could absorb an educated youth bulge in Oromia in a way that's exemplary for all of Africa. Oromuma created Gada. If you have an idea that Gada is one thing and that it has to be applied from the top, that's not the way Gada functioned. But I think that Gada was a powerful, exemplary institution that was born from the principles of Oromuma, and that it can come in a creative new way if given that chance. So,
thank you very much, Dr. Boni. We're glad to have you.
Thank you.